Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to episode number 38 of The Jersey Wall. This is real life. I'm sitting down with TSN's Kristian Jack to record this episode. KJ, thanks so much for being here.
Absolute pleasure. I'm very impressed with the setup, and you and I obviously been colleagues, and we wanted to set this up for a while, and it's been difficult with scheduling. So great to finally be here, and very impressed with what's behind us.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a prize collection. Today, what I want to talk about, of course, as I'm sure many of you could have guessed when I bring TSN's best analyst on the show, is have him break down some footy for us. So I want to start the show off with just a pretty broad question to you. Really, we talk a lot in footy today about what makes a world-class player. What's the difference between a player who's just really good? Is Harry Kane world-class? He's impressed, but has he done enough in Europe? I want to know, in your opinion, what makes a player world-class?
Going right at me right away.
I have to know.
Straight away, the biggest question of all.
Absolutely.
It's funny because I always think about this term now because I go back to a lot of my times on the Footy Show when I used to work with James and Brendan, and they almost made world-class my kind of thing because I would always use it as the true barometer as the top team and as a top player. And so I always think about that now, where they're always mocking me whenever I get there. But I've been pretty consistent on this stance. I know everybody doesn't necessarily agree with it, but for me, a genuine world-class player has sustained the high level of excellence for a consistent amount of time. And you look at him and you go, yeah, he's a genuine superstar, a difference maker. And how many there are in the world, I used to be consistent. I'm pretty still consistent on this take, is that like, they have to be, if you were to name a top 23 world squad, for me, they have to either be in it or in serious discussion and contention to be in it. So whether that means there's 25, 30, 35, 40, I certainly wouldn't go over that.
Right.
So for me, that's what a genuine world-class player is. And I've always thought that for me has been the standard. I remember Sir Alex Ferguson would never really go that far and call David Beckham a world-class player, and I always thought he was bang on with that. And I sometimes cringe when I'm in MLS press conferences or certain things where I hear, very good players, but really labeled as world class.
Yeah, I think a lot of Toronto FC fans will hope that Joe Vinko will be labeled as world class, but then we see how he does in turn, and we're like, okay, well, let's just come into this league. Maybe he's just impressing a little more.
Look, there's a lot of great things you can say about him. It doesn't have to be that.
Bar none. I know I have his jersey.
There you go.
Only jersey. Here's my world class list. All the players.
You've got a lot of great ones up
of
here. I haven't even looked at all of them, but when I walked in here, I have to say the Kante Leicester one was it grabbed my attention pretty quickly. It's a pretty cool and unique.
That's exactly why I wanted to get it. Commemorative of a phenomenal season for what probably is the greatest achievement for a Premier League side.
A world class midfielder.
A world-class midfielder. You heard it here. So I want to kick right into the Premier League on the note of Premier League players, and I want to talk about Man City just to start, because they're always a good place to start at the top of the list.
It's your team, right?
It is my team.
I thought so.
City. There's been a lot of discussion that their team is so good and so far ahead of every other team right now that they have the league on lock for the next few years. What's your take on that? Do you think they have the league secured for the next few years?
No, I wouldn't go that far. I think that they have shown us a level of, probably a level of quality that has never really been seen in the Premier League over the consistent amount of time. And you go through all the amount of victories that they won in a row. The one thing I would say about it is that they've been able to do it with a consistent group of players that have almost been picking themselves week in, week out. And they've been quite fortunate to do that. Usually, over the recent years, that's been an enormous challenge for teams to take on the campaign of a very difficult Champions League campaign of cup competitions, and then get to play the high level of the Premier League at that highest level as well. I do think that it might cost them over the next few months that they've played in arguably probably 80 to 90% of a player's capacity for a season already, and it's late February when we record this, early March.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's something to watch for. I do think that there's been a few warning signs, particularly the game against Wigan, and Arsenal even in the League Cup final. I don't think they've been at their best yet. You certainly couldn't say that about the Champions League game, which was probably far too comfortable for them over the two legs anyway. So to answer your question, I wouldn't go that far, because I do think that you take a couple of players out of there, and I know they've had injuries, and Mendy's been a big loss, and next season you'd expect him to be there, and you think, okay, why wouldn't they be better? But, you never know in this game, and next year, you coming off a World Cup year, you're going to get exhaustion from key players as well. So I wouldn't say that they have a lock, to answer your question.
So originally it was going to be, okay, well, how can they improve their squad? For you, does that mean improve the depth of their squad, given that if they're good enough to compete in so many tournaments, obviously their players are going to burn out? So is it that they go out and get players to replace starters in their team, or just good enough players that'll be okay to be in the squad rotation so that they can hopefully win everything they set out to and don't have that big burnout?
Yeah, look, a little bit of both. I think you're always going to expect them to spend more money on players. I think that and they've been pretty vocal on this, they're never going to spend the amount of money this summer that they've just spent on the previous summer. That this was a unique year where there was a clear identity from the top, from Cheeky Berry, Stein, and Ferenc Ariano and Pep Guardiola were all on the same page, that it was an aging squad, an underachieving squad with players being paid too much money for what they were producing on the field. They needed to go, so they did. Clichy, Sanya, Nasri, many of them were set aside. Zabaleta, and then the next wave of Manchester City players have come in, and they've been expensive because they're very good and they're very young. And so, to answer your question, do I expect them to sign more players? I do. They won't sign as many as they did before. But now the next step for them is to not only integrate the youth with Foden and whoever else, Zinchenko, whoever else they're going to bring in and identify as basically first-team players, but also to make those other players better. And that will how they will get better. Eventually, if you're a Manchester City fan, in a year's time or 2 years' time, you want to look at Emerick Laporte and John Stones and say, they're by far and away our best centre-back partnership. And that will mean that they've progressed to a level that they're superior to Otamendi and company, which right now you can't say that.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. There's one player that we didn't mention, especially as we talk about that back line, is Ederson. Last year we brought in Bravo because we expected him to be, a Barcelona-esque keeper who's great with his feet and has great, reflexes and saves. And to be honest, we saw through last season he couldn't save anything. Right. His positioning was awful. His reflexes were terrible. Every shot on goal pretty much was he would face 3 shots and concede 3. I refer to that Chelsea game where they scored 3 and he wasn't at all formidable. So we brought in Ederson, who's I think probably the most composed keeper I've ever seen. He gives me heart attacks every time he touches the ball because of how close players can get to him before he decides to pick out the inch perfect pass. How do you think he's been for City?
I think he's been remarkable, actually, and I think that now that's a massive relief for a Manchester City team that wants to become a giant in the European game, that they don't have to worry about that, because you never know. As you said, you buy Bravo, you think it's settled, it's not settled. So we've seen with Chelsea, you buy Bakayoko, you think it's settled, it's not settled. Sometimes things just don't go the way you want, and that's football. That's been going back for years. Manchester United bought a player called Juan Sebastian Veron, and they thought they got a superstar. Not long after that, they got Di Maria, and he was shipped out. So you just never know. But now I think that, to answer your question, Nathan, that the jury can be settled with Ederson, and he looks like he's going to be more than fine. And he's brilliant with his feet. He's adapted so well to that football club. We saw him last year in the Champions League. Obviously, you know him from where he's. You're a big fan of Benfica yourself. Yep. So I think they identified very well, and they went out and got it. And every credit to them. It's another area that I think will be helping that team to become a super team for 4 or 5 years.
Where would you put him now? Because he's still very young, and goalkeepers typically find their the heart of their career, towards the later years. They age well. And he's, I think, only 23, if that. He might be younger than that. Where do you see him now going forward in terms of in the Premier League? Is he not the best? I'll give that one to De Gea, but is he better than Courtois? Is he better than Lloris?
It's funny because this discussion about goalkeepers seems to be quite trending at the moment. I certainly found myself talking a lot about it on our shows and Footy Talks last week. It came up as well in Toronto. I think that he is, back to my point before about the level of world class where you have to show sustained excellence over a longer period of time. He's on his way to that. For me, the best goalkeepers in the Premier League are David De Gea and Thibaut Courtois, and he's not that yet. But they've shown that level of consistency. Right. They've shown what they can do in big games, and they've able to go on and prove that. So look, could he be there at the end of this season? Yeah, he could. He could go on and win a Champions League.
Right.
So look, they're on the right path towards that. And as I've said on the show and as I've said at 40 Talks, I do think the difference between a legitimate top goalkeeper, top 5, top 10 goalkeeper, and the difference between a top 25 goalkeeper is enormous. And I do think that sometimes it doesn't get talked about enough. Maybe the top 10 outfield player in the world compared to the top 25 outfield in the world is smaller. Right. And I think that makes goalkeepers undervalued in this game.
Fair enough. Another fantastic Brazilian keeper this season who's kind of had his breakout season is Alisson of Roma. And I want to know, for you, you've seen tons of his performances. You know, he's just been credit. I've seen headlines saying, you know, he's the Messi of goalkeepers, which I think, you know, are probably a little too soon to call that. But for Brazil's number 1 for the World Cup, do you go with Ederson or do you go with Alisson?
I think it'll be Alisson because I think that Chichi's got his goalkeeper and he's confident with him. And I think that that's been decided. And the good thing, one of the reasons why I'm a really big fan of this Brazilian team is stability, and I think that they've decided from a very early time that they know their clear identity, they know the system they're going to play. He's actually already named his starting 11 for the first game. It's kind of brash and out there, and it might not be that case, as we know with injuries and form can change that, but I think right now it will be him, and I don't think that's too bad for Ederson. I think that, you know, ultimately he's probably not going to get a game at the World Cup. He might if they win the first 2 games. But that's okay. I think it'll be good for him to be around that unit again and continue to learn. And Alisson's a sensational goalkeeper that I think is obviously going to get to that level as well that we talked about before with genuine world-class goalkeepers like De Gea and Courtois. But, I mean, you must be delighted with Ederson, no? I mean, you talked about Bravo there. I look at Bravo as someone as an analyst, and I felt for him because I think his confidence was shot last year. And I got that wrong. I thought he'd be really good for them. And I actually thought that I was probably in a very unique minority. I actually thought he had a chance to resurrect his career at City. They obviously decided that it was ruthless and they need to do it, and every credit what they've done. But the way that you talked about Bravo, there was almost some disdain coming as a supporter there. I could feel it from you.
Yeah, so like I said, I refer back to that Chelsea game because that was the game I remember just saying, I can't do this anymore. You are just atrocious. I can't handle you. Because I used to be a keeper as well. And so I know it's cutthroat. And you are the guy who gets blamed. And it sucks. But you are the guy who gets blamed if you guys are losing. And as much as City are fantastic going forward, if we have to pick a weakness, it's that they're susceptible to the counter, which they absolutely are. And especially last season with how many old center backs, the aggregate age of our fullbacks, we had 4 fullbacks all in excess of 33, and it was just, we couldn't keep going like that. So, you know, it sucks for Bravo, but I understood Guardiola too, who I wasn't thrilled with either, because I'm like, listen, we're paying you 19 mil per season, and you're supposed to be the most phenomenal manager in the world. I expect better, and thank God so does he. So when he gave that opportunity to Willy Caballero, I was like, fantastic. Okay, I need a shot stopper before I need someone who can play it out from the back, because I don't want to see us concede so much. And this season, Ederson's conceded, 19 goals?
Right. And every credit to Guardiola because he was able to adapt. You know, he knew that the way that he wanted to play. And, you know, I go back to the game last season at Leicester where, you know, that was really, I thought, was the big moment in the evolution of Guardiola and whether he would go one way or the other. And I think anybody who's read his books and listens to Guardiola a number of times, there was never a doubt that he was going to waver. There was never a doubt that he was going to change. Yep. But that was the moment where it really came to a head with the English media and they're like, look, you're getting thrashed playing this way. You know, you just cannot go out there and concede 2 goals in the first 5 minutes like they did that day. And he's like, you know, and he's since said that he's had inner doubts. It's come out since where he's actually said maybe what, and that he still maybe for a night thought, do I need to do different? He woke up the next morning and he's like, no, I'm doing it my way. And so far his ways worked perfectly this season. Yeah,
well, and that's exactly right. And I'm glad he figured out how to change that. I remember when we played Everton last season and we got thrashed 4-0.
That's right.
And when I'm watching a blowout game, and I'm cheering for City. When we go down 1-0, I'm hoping we can come back. And same thing with 2-0. But we were so pathetic that game, and they were just cutting through us. And I remember Tom Davies, the youngster, scored. I'm like, okay, you know what? Keep battering them, because I want Pep to know this is what's going to happen if you don't learn to adapt. Just because if we're losing 4-0, let's lose 5-0, let's lose 6-0. Let's show Pep, hey, by the way, wake up, because we got to do something here. And he did. And he's like, listen, my tactics are going to work. Yeah. And even against Liverpool, when we were getting battered this season, he's like, this is an opportunity to learn. Yeah. and we're going to learn.
Yeah.
So now we're going to learn how to deal with three of the quickest players on the pitch, Firmino, Salah, and Mane, sprinting at you, and I want you to learn how to be composed, and it worked. And the reason I bring up Liverpool is as my segue to the next point. That front three has been outstanding. 66 goals between them. Do you see them as title contenders going forward?
Yeah, I do. Because I think that Naby Keita is a sensational player. And I think that, he's going to be exactly what that football club needs. A player who brings grit and steel in midfield. But isn't he's got the athleticism of an N'Golo Kante, but he's a little bit further forward in terms of his technical ability than Kante. He's obviously scores more goals than Kante. He's not an overall better player than him for me, but he could get there. And I think that spine of that club is slowly being tweaked, and the new foundations are coming in with him and Van Dijk and maybe a goalkeeper. So I do think that this is a very special time to be a Liverpool fan. And they've been through a lot of really difficult times over the last few years. People always have that reference point of the year they could have won the title in the Suarez under Rodgers, but that was really just one freak season out of about 7 or 8 where they've been absolutely nowhere near to contending. So look, I think that if they can keep these guys healthy, and if they can keep these guys, which is not always an easy thing for them to do because they are in the pyramid of transfers, they are lower than a lot of clubs, as we've seen with the Coutinho saga, then they definitely are contenders.
If you take Salah out of that team, they're right back where they started, aren't they?
Yeah, I suppose they are. Yeah, I mean, look, he's added a whole new dimension. The great thing that I think the most about Salah is that he's allowed Firmino to do what he does. And for me, Firmino's my favorite out of the three.
Okay.
And I think he's just the most intelligent out of the three. He's the most important tactically out of the three. But he doesn't guarantee you 25 goals every season, which is what you need out of a number 9 to win titles for the most part. So it takes the pressure off him. Yes, he's got over 20 goals in all competitions, but he may not get to 20 Premier League goals this year. And that doesn't matter because you've got Salah. You've got Salah scoring the goals as well. And when you watch them play, sometimes Firmino will drift wide and Salah will be the 9. We showed some of that on the weekend when we did some tactics at halftime on our TSN show. So I just think that he adds a little bit more of that ruthlessness that they've missed. Even Coutinho didn't score that many goals. Yep. He brought a lot of qualities in other areas. So they're a good blend, and that's what the game's about. The game is about collective balance, and they work together, and every credit for the way that Liverpool club has come together. But you're right, he's been an enormous addition, and at £34 million is an absolute steal, which is when you're Liverpool and you don't have... Yes, you've got money and you've got the Fenway Sports Group, and the amount of money they give Van Dijk is the same amount of money as the Red Sox have really given David Price over the years. But when you look at that team, they do not have the ability to go and shop like Manchester City do and spend the money on those transfer fees. So you've got to go out and find Firmino for 29, Salah for 34, and then make them $150 million players yourself, like they did with Coutinho as well. That's the recipe for success without selling them before you win anything, though.
That's that Klopp way, isn't it? But you think back to the Champions League final against Bayern a few years ago, and then we look back on that team, and I remember I did not too long ago.
Special team.
You see Royce, and you see Lewandowski, and you see Blaszczykowski. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that was the team, and Hummels was in defense. Yeah, it was outstanding. For Liverpool, though, one more note on them is that, as we know, they're fantastic going forward. Defensively is where their problems are, and as they build that spine, they improve their squad. Do you see? Let's say, hypothetically, a lot of reports in the media are linking Alisson with Liverpool. Yeah. Does that then solve everything, or do they need to then add another center back, or is it just a matter of making the tactics work?
Well, I think they need another midfielder as well. So, like, if you play...
On top of Keita, or...?
On top of him, yeah. So, like, for me, if you had Keita, Wijnaldum, and an athletic box-to-box midfielder... I mean, we could sit here and talk about whoever you want there, but place a different midfielder there. Then, I think that would be a very, very special team. So I don't want to ever have a go at him, but Jordan Henderson's not necessarily a player that I don't think you want to be playing every single week. Milner fits a different role where he can come in and add a different amount of quality. Look, I think they need a goalkeeper. I actually like Karius more than most. I think he's been very good over the last few weeks. And the one thing about Klopp is that he's shown a remarkable tendency to be extremely loyal to those players, and maybe loyal to a fault, because he gave Mignolet a new deal.
Yeah.
When he came in, he watched Mignolet for a year, and everybody, I was at the game, a couple of my friends are Liverpool season ticket holders. I've been amongst that Anfield group for a while. Mignolet was not a fan. There was not a fan of Mignolet at that club, apart from him, and he gave him the new deal. And then he struggled, and he almost wants to give the players an opportunity to succeed or fail. And you've got to have it both ways when you progress, when you work on progressing these players. You cannot just say, okay, you, and you, I think you're good, you're going to go like that. You're rubbish, you're out. You've got to give them an opportunity because other players are looking at how you treat those players as well.
Yeah.
So now, why is that relevant? Because now Karius has been playing very well. So if he doesn't have another major, what I would call match of the day mistake, and what I mean by that is a highlight reel mistake. Those who don't watch live games see this mistake, and it becomes a massive, massive story in the headlines in England, which kills careers. It can kill a career. It almost killed De Gea, because in his first year at United, people thought this guy's terrible because he watched highlight package. You watch him live, it's like, okay, there's some signals here.
Right.
If Karius doesn't have another error, does Klopp then go, I think this guy could be my guy? Because if he does, and he turns out that it's another Mignolet, then that will just, their rapid rise towards the top of the league is done, So I think it's a big thing. Look, Alisson would be a massive, massive addition for them, but have they got the funds to still do that? We'll see.
If you are Klopp, then given what you just said, do you then say, you know what, then we don't need Alisson. Let's keep our confidence in Karius? Because since the Spurs game, really, I mean, the Wanyama goal, which was the one that kind of killed them, was not really his fault. There's not much you can do about a cannon being rifled at you. I thought the punch was okay.
It was criticized, but I didn't have a problem with it.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's been playing, relatively well since then. If Klopp decides to back him and pass up on Alisson, do you think that's what he'll do, or do you think the Liverpool fans will say, no, listen, Alisson's available, we need him?
Well, I think they'll want him, but whether they get him comes down to finances, and down to the chairman, and they'll look at that and whether they think they want to go there. So they don't necessarily spend tons and tons of money. The big question mark for me is, was the Van Dijk signing financed by the sale of Coutinho? I know it came first, but they knew that Philippe Coutinho was leaving.
Right.
Van Dijk was announced on the 28th of December, the Christmas tree picture, the famous one. Coutinho was suddenly left out, had a minor injury. Then the rumors started. Then the news came, and he was out.
Right.
So they knew in December that, look, Coutinho's gone. We tried to hold on to him. Klopp was consistent in the summer. It's all about timing. You come to us, if you're Barcelona, you come to us in August. We're starting the season in a few weeks. Sorry, you're not getting him. Then, obviously, they prepared for Coutinho to keep him happy. Coutinho was magnificent for Liverpool in November and December. And I said on TSN, I almost felt like he was liberated. It was almost like he knows he's got what he wants. Yeah. Just go out there and deliver it. So, do they have the money? We'll find out. That's the big question mark, Nathan, I think.
Another top contender, or they at least have shown to be over the past few seasons, have been Spurs, especially since Harry Kane's been really performing at a high level. But they haven't quite reached that level. You look at the team all around, and especially when Alderweireld's in the team, they're fantastic defensively. Their midfield is pretty solid, and they have arguably the best striker in the world on their team. So what's not clicking for them? What do they need to do to get into title contention?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's... A couple of years ago, my answer to that was that they needed a better Christian Eriksen, and now they have a better Christian Eriksen because he's by far and away reached a different level that we wanted to see over the last 18 months. This season and last, there's been an outstanding, consistent performer for them. So they've got the playmaker. Ali's not as good this year that he was last year. That's natural. He's still very, very young. They've got the goal scorer. The one thing I'd say about them is I think that they need to find, and I think it's coming, excuse me, they need to find different ways to beat teams. And I like the addition of Lucas Moura because I think that allows them to be a little bit more wide with their attacks. They're not as predictable. Too often this season, particularly in games at Wembley, teams have gone, hang on a minute, we're not going to give you the respect anymore. We're going to go deeper. We're going to make sure that we respect you more. We're not going to open up. We're going to come deeper, narrow, open the width. And I was watching a game this year against West Ham, comes to mind, where Son, who was in a really good a good run of form at that time, he didn't touch the ball for over 6 minutes. And they had the ball all the time, and he didn't touch it. So they just open the wing. He comes in. He wants the ball the entire time. He just goes to Davis. He goes on the left. He goes on the right side with Aurier or whoever's playing Trippier. And teams just say, okay, we don't think you're going to beat us. And they tried to get around that by getting Llorente because they thought, okay, well, you're going to do that. We'll just cross in and we'll get Llorente. You can't find time in the team because it's Kane all the time.
Right.
So I think that is part of the problem and learning how to win. And I think that we're seeing that. I think what they've done in the Champions League this year has been absolutely magnificent. And obviously we're taping this in between legs against Juventus, and their performance in Turin was tremendous. They showed a lot of character and a lot of grit that obviously the manager has made a massive difference there.
One player who's been kind of not necessarily a standout, but who deserves massive praise, especially this season, has been Dembele.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a few seasons ago when Dembele really started performing under Poch, and you said Pochettino has sparked a renaissance in Dembele. And now he's arguably the most underrated player in the league. And I want to know, for you, who is the most underrated player in the league? Is it Dembele?
Wow. I can't say Dembele anymore because I think he's rated. Because what we've heard is... But look, my Moussa Dembele story is this. Moussa Dembele played for Fulham at the very beginning of the start of a season at Manchester United. You can check the year. It might have been 2010, 2011. And played Manchester United off the park. And he was magnificent that day. And he was exactly what I want in a central midfielder. Strength, power, vision, quick turn, left-footed, opened the game up. And I thought, this is a guy Man United should sign now. That's how good I thought he was. Look, I don't get everything right, but I thought he was that good then. Right. And they didn't sign him. And then obviously he went on and played well at Tottenham. And the thing is with Dembele is that he's always lacked that consistency because he gets injured a lot. And then last year he played a lot with Wanyama, and then Dyer played in midfield, and then he didn't seem to have the stability to play 90 minutes, so he would always be that player who would come on in flashes, and Pochettino wouldn't always trust him because if you need a midfielder to start and end, he would always maybe I'll bring him on. So I can't really say for me that he's the most underrated player. It's a great question. There's a reason you're sitting there. You're asking some good ones.
Put a lot of thought into this stuff.
You know what I like? You know who I like? And I don't know if he's underrated. I like Abdoulou Doucouré from Watford.
Abdoulou Doucouré, yeah, absolutely.
I think he's the kind of player that I've watched a lot. We've had a lot of Watford games on Premier League and TSN this year. And I look at Doucouré and I think he has all the capabilities to playing for a top 6 team. I think for me, he's got the athleticism. Sometimes he falls asleep and you think, where's he gone for half an hour? But then he can get back in the game. It looks like he's ironed out that indiscipline that I thought he had when he first came to the Premier League. Strength, pace, power, scores goals as well, which is really important. And, if I'm Arsenal, I'd spend 40 million on him tomorrow because I think they need a player like that.
It's actually funny you say that. I've literally been saying that for 2 months because I've been clipping all the Watford games. That's what I do. There we go. I get the Watford games. So I've been watching him, and I play Fantasy Premier League. And I was like, oh, my God, you got to bring him into your squad because he gets – the only problem is that – and that's exactly like you said. He lacks that discipline because he's overly – he commits to pretty much everything, and he does get yellow carded a lot, but he scores a lot too, and he's got a cannon of a foot on him. I think that's fair.
And to be fair, he's played under 2 different managers now, and he's played in games and seasons where they played in different tactics, and he's played in form teams and he's played in bad teams, and he's still kind of come through it as the best player. And I like that a lot about him too. So, whether you play him, Watford have been through this run, obviously under Marco Silva, where they were great and they had an identity to play 3 at the back. Then they went away from that, so they went to a 4, and he obviously struggled a little bit there. There's a game of this season where they got absolutely outran by Man City, I think. Nothing. Manchester United came in on a Wednesday night and destroyed them as well because of midfield problems. So he's never really failed that test. He's still, for me, looked like he's really enjoying his football, and he's looked like the best player for them.
So on the inverse of this, who's the most overrated player then in the Prem?
Wow. Okay. Most overrated player in the Premier League. I'm just going to say it for this season, because we're starting to see things come out now where people want to pick their teams of the season. I know it's a bit premature. I don't get the Marcos Alonso hype. I don't get it. And I know, and I know why people like him, because he scores a lot of goals. And last year, I think he was very good for Chelsea, but defensively, I have a lot of concerns about him as a left back. A lot of concerns. And when they're bad, Chelsea are really bad, and he's part of that problem for me. And I wasn't surprised why Antonio Conte wanted, or reportedly wanted, Alexandro last summer. People were like, "What do you want to get him for? You got Alonso." I'm like, "This is miles better than Marcos Alonso. And then they got Emerson Palmieri from Roma, who I think has the capability to make Alonso nothing more than a reserve player going forward. Alonso's been great for them in free kicks. He scored goals in 6-yard box. He can play as a wide midfielder in any team, and he's got a great ability to cross the ball, which seems to be a dying art in the top level. But I don't know. Maybe it's something with me and left backs, because I don't get the Danny Rose thing either. I think Danny Rose is okay. He got named in the Premier League Team of the Year last year. He only played 18 games, and I thought, and I know he's great going forward, but as an actual defensive left back, I'd rather have Ben Davies, and I think that's why Tottenham have been better this year defensively, because Davies has got a lot more defensive attributes than Rose, and he started to cross the ball better as well. Think about the game against Arsenal, crossing for Kane. There's another one not long after. I thought he was excellent at Palace when they got the late winner last weekend as well. So maybe it's me and left backs. There's not a lot of great left backs in the Prem though.
No, you're right. It's funny that you mentioned Alonso, because I love Alonso, because I love him as that goal scorer.
Yeah.
And I think his...
Well, fantasy players love him.
Exactly. And that's kind of it.
I
think he does enough offensively to outweigh what he lacks defensively, because of how good Chelsea have been defensively last season particularly.
Right.
And I think the reason he can get so far forward is because of that man Conte, who just kind of says, all right, guys, go. I'll stay back. And it worked well with Matic last season, and not so much with Bakayoko this season, but that's a whole other debate. But yeah, I thought I bought into that Alonso hype all the way, and I thought he was, if Rose was left back of the season in the Prem last year, I was pissed because it wasn't Alonso.
Right.
For me.
Right.
For me, I think probably the most, just my opinion, I have
I want to hear your answers. This is not just my podcast.
I think Ozil is probably my most overrated player in the Prem, personally, just because I think but then again, it's also a lot of Arsenal's fault, because he's just playing for, he hasn't been his best. He hasn't delivered on 350K a week, and he disappears far too often. So I think, yes, on his day, he's a world-class player, and he creates, since 2013, the same amount of opportunities as Messi or whatever the stat is, but I think he disappears far too often. I think he only turns up when he wants to, and I don't like that attitude on the player. For me, that's why I just think he's overrated. Like, if I had to have him or Christian Eriksen, for instance, in my squad, I would take Eriksen.
On current form, I would agree with you. The one thing that the biggest disappointment I have in Mesut Ozil right now is that he looked at that Arsenal squad, and he looked at that Arsenal, I know you use this word franchise organization here in North America. It's not really like that. But as a club in general, he looked at that club and said, yes, I'll re-sign with you. That's my biggest problem I have with him. Because if you are a top-class player and you look at that team and you think, why am I playing with these guys?
Right.
That's what I understand what you're saying, and I know there's this big thing about he disappears in games. But like, he's only one player playing with 10 other players.
Right.
It's a team sport, and there's far too many average players playing at that football club. And he looks at that team and goes, 350 grand, yeah, I'll sign.
Yeah,
I'll play with you. He didn't do what Van Persie did, which is what he wanted to do. He's had enough there. Van Persie had enough and said, I want to win trophies. He didn't do what Sanchez did, who said, I've had enough and want to win trophies. Yeah, you can call the other guys Adebayor, Nasri. You can call them whatever you want about money. But at the end of the day, they want to win trophies as well. Footballers want to get paid, and they want to win trophies. And for me, he signed that contract to get paid. He didn't sign that contract to win trophies. So that's the biggest problem I have with Ozil. I think he's a special player, and I'm just very, very disappointed right now that, yes, Arsenal need that player to continue, and he's got to believe in the system, but he's been playing with some bang average players for far too long.
Who do you see finishing in the top four? Obviously City, but between second and fifth, Arsenal aren't even in contention, I don't think, but between that second and fifth spot, it's so competitive.
It's a battle between Chelsea and Tottenham, no?
I think so, yeah. Right? I think United and Liverpool have it on lock, but I think Chelsea have just been so suspect this season. And my friend has been calling it since last year. He said Conte doesn't know how to recover when he's losing. He knows how to win, but he doesn't know how to come back when he's losing. All right, let's put on, okay, Batshuayi, go. Okay, let's bring in Giroud because I guess we need a target man. He doesn't know what to do when they're down, and now they've been down more often than last season, and he doesn't know how to recover. And I think that's why Chelsea haven't been anywhere near as dominant as they were last season.
Plus, I agree with that. The one thing I'd say about that is that the problem with Chelsea is that when they make a substitution, they don't change the way they play. So Giroud can maybe fit into that. I give him a lot of credit for that signing because I think they looked at it and said, we're far too one-dimensional. There's far too much pressure on Morata, who needs to be better but has got to be given some bedding in period, and we need to go do that. That's their fault for not recognizing that when they got rid of Diego Costa in the first place. There's something to be said that Batshuayi is already performing well for Dortmund but couldn't perform well under them. He didn't suddenly become a good player. He didn't suddenly become a bad player at Chelsea. So there's a lot of concerns I have about that football club, and it starts with number 4. I think Fabregas is a major problem. A major problem. When they play Fabregas in midfield, the tempo is far too slow, and it just suits teams for fun in the Premier League. Bournemouth just destroyed them at Stamford Bridge because of that. The tempo's far too slow. He can be defensively, I think, can be very vulnerable. I got a lot of time for Cesc Fabregas as a player, but I think sometimes you got to look at it and think, what is he now? It was not a surprise to me that they picked Danny Drinkwater at Old Trafford, because you can't play him in a game like that. You just get overrun. Right. Fabregas, I think, is one of the most important players in footballing in this era of football history. His goal in the 2008 UEFA European Championships, the penalty in the shootout, secured Spain's legacy as being a team that got over the hump and realized that we can win. And he's a major part of what is a remarkable era of football. But I just look at him now and I think there's a big problem there. And yes, it's easy to blame Bakayoko, who's been a disaster. But, I do think when you look at Fabregas, I think there's a major concern. And people see when he's got time on his hands and his vision and the ball over the top. But they don't work hard enough without the ball. And when they lose the ball, they're a very, very different team than when they have the ball. And that's the biggest difference from last year.
Is there a player who you can just think of, or you've maybe put some thought into, about who could be that Fabregas replacement? Because obviously in his day, he was outstanding, right? His ability, his distribution was just fantastic, and he's kind of the one who pulls the strings, whereas Conte gets criticized for not having that long ball on him. He just recovers the ball and gives it to the guy who can pass it. And Bakayoko wasn't that guy. Matic had a phenomenal long pass on him, and at least he would work hard. And if we're saying, okay, well, Fabregas, he just doesn't have it anymore. It's too slow. He just can't work with the speed of the Prem, and that's why you get lit up by Bournemouth and Watford. Yep. And then hold Barcelona to a 1-1 where I thought they could have won that game.
Tempo was slower in that game, though.
Exactly, because it
suited them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anybody who you think, if you had to throw someone out, and you can say no, just
I'm thinking
off the spot. Yeah, for sure.
What about, I've got one. A player that I think is one of the most underrated players in world football, Saul Niguez.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Perfect.
And he's on a 7-year extension with Atletico Madrid because they recognize that really soon. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But that's just whether you can get him, whether you can afford him, whether you can get him is another thing. But for me, the kind of player, him.
Okay. So we'll move to just a couple more things on Prem, and then we'll go to Champions League.
Okay.
And this one's just a rapid fire. Who do you think wins the Golden Boot? Is it Kane? Is it Salah? Or is it Aguero who makes a comeback?
Kane.
Kane?
Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah, fair enough. More clinical in the box. Now, what about Arsenal? Arsenal is just such a great talking point for ever. How familiar are you with Arsenal Fan TV?
I've seen certain clips. I'm not familiar. I couldn't tell you any of the names of people on there or anything, if that's what you mean.
So a lot of us here, like in Jersey Wall, we love Arsenal Fan TV. We watch it religiously because it's just, they're very animated characters, and they get criticized for criticizing.
Right.
But they're fans.
I love the premise around it. I love the fact that fans have got an ability to be able to connect with other fans, because fans are very, very intelligent, a lot of them, about their own club, and they love it, and the passion comes out as well. So I guess one of the reasons why I'm not that familiar with it is, in my job, you're surrounded by influencers, and you've got to make sure what you listen to and what you don't listen to, and whether you got to trust your own abilities. And I never want to go on camera and talk about a player at Arsenal being slagged off by, I don't know, Joey on Arsenal TV. It's not that for me that I don't know if there is a Joey on there, but
no, but my co-host name is Joey.
Oh,
so I love that.
Hey Joey. But you know what I'm saying. So I just think that there's a massive place for it. Every credit that they've created that. So
they of course, as fans, have the right to be furious. That's kind of what's made them.
Yeah.
More so than anything, they have more than 700,000 subscribers on
It'd be
on
pretty
YouTube.
boring if Arsenal won the league every year.
Well, that's kind of what they're saying. Hector Bellerin came out with a quote, and he said, "You guys thrive off our success, off our failure." Sorry. So he's criticizing their support to the club as a profitable business who make money from the fans being upset. And they all, everybody on the channel said, "Well, that's ridiculous. You don't think we want to see you win?
Right.
Are you out of your damn mind?"
Right.
I think more than anything, their reactions are justified, right? If you have Hector Bellerin who can cross a road, complaining that, "Well, you guys need to stop, yelling at me." Yeah. Well, you're a professional. You have to be able to take the criticism, right?
Yeah. Yeah. More than fair. Great point. Ultimately, it's just, if if there are people watching it, the numbers speak for themselves.
Right.
Like this is 2018. If people aren't watching it, they're not famous.
Right.
So
exactly.
Hector Bellerin can moan all he wants. Can moan about people profiting from him, whatever. The viewers are the viewers, and they're watching them for a reason. So they've created this huge fan Every credit.
And they said if their response to Hector Bellerin was, "Okay, well, if you don't want us to profit off your failure, stop playing so poorly." Right? Play better. We'll see you win. We'll be happy on that note.
Yeah, how's he dropped off so quick?
No kidding.
That's another problem with Arsenal. Wenger just doesn't get his players better. When you look at Pochettino and what he does with Spurs, he take good players and makes them great. Arsenal take great players and make them good.
No kidding, right? So is that the problem for you then? Is it Wenger overall, or is it the players, or is it Kroenke? It's everything.
Oh my goodness, where do we go? I think it's clear that whether you believe that Wenger is the right man or not the right man, it is clear that if Arsenal were to let go of him tomorrow, there would be 100% consensus now who will know the game would say, yes, that's fair. So once you get to that level, even the most passionate and loyal Arsene Wenger supporter has got to a point now where they go, yes, that's fair. Then I think the argument goes the other way. It's like, why? If everybody can understand if he got let go tomorrow, why is he still there? That's the question mark. And look, there's an incredible amount of responsibility that he's got at the club, an incredible amount of trust. I think the biggest story of this is it's sad, because I think he is one of the most intelligent football men to ever grace the high level of the sports, and I love listening to him. I rarely learn a lot of things from managers every single time. I learn something almost every single time he talks. I think he's got a lot to offer the game consistently. He's changed the game incredibly in the Premier League, and I think it will. I think his legacy will not be tainted eventually when it's gone. They'll all talk about the positives. That's what, we all hope, that the positive human race can come away from the skeptics, which is often present day rather than the future. But it's clearly now not getting the best out of that football club. And, he's a very, very proud man who still believes he can, and he won't walk away. And unfortunately, that's where you need someone to come on and say, sorry, we have higher standards here. And that performance at Wembley on the weekend was, as I think I tweeted, it's just another example where reputations are severely tarnished if you're a football manager or a footballer. And you look at that and you think those kind of performances have been allowed and tolerated by Arsenal for far too long for a club that's supposed to be a massive club.
So we've seen him under scrutiny for the better part of at least 4 years now, if not
longer than that.
He's
yeah.
4, 5, 6.
I remember writing something for The Score in 2012 that time was over. And that was when they got beat. I believe they got beat 4-3 at Blackburn, and they got massacred by its on set pieces.
Right.
And I think Yakubu scored. I remember this guy it's done. And for me, it has been ever since then. I'm never going to go at every single show and say why they're not firing him. It's just boring. Ultimately they're not going to get rid of him. So it's like, okay, well, let's talk about other things. There's no point banging the same drum over every single time.
Say Stan Kroenke said, "You know what? I've had enough of this," and not that he will, because if he would have, it would have happened 3 years ago. When they not even 3 years ago, but when they beat Hull for the FA Cup,
right. That
would have been the time to sail off into the sunset. Of the available managers in world football today, that could include Tuchel, that could include Ancelotti. Who do you think is the guy to be his successor, the next one to carry the torch for Arsenal?
Who do I think,
Yeah.
or who do I think they'll hire?
Both.
I don't think that they're much like when Ferguson left Manchester United. When Wenger leaves Arsenal, he will have a massive say. So I don't think they're ever. I think, and this is justified. The most passionate Wenger defenders are terrified of getting into that manager carousel, where they become a club, where they're like, okay, we'll bring in 2 years of him, and we'll bring in 1 year of him, and there's something to be applauded about that. I've got a lot of time for people like that. The loyalty in life isn't strong enough as it is in relationships, and they're loyal to these people. You speak to people in their early 20s; it's all they've ever known is a football club managed by Arsene Wenger. So I understand the loyalty, and it's charming, I think. But so they don't want to get to the point where, and this is never going to happen, and I apologize for the image, but they don't want to get to the point where 2021 is Arsenal's being managed by Sam Allardyce.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So it's just not going to happen. Right. So it's a long story, a long answer to get to the point where they need to identify the next great young manager or continental manager, because it's not going to be English, continental manager who they can say, here's the plan, we believe in you, and if you don't play well in the first year, we're going to give you the same rope that Wenger's had in the last 7 or 8 years. And if you don't make the Champions League, we're going to give you're going to build this football club. And whether that's Marco Silva, who I think is very capable of doing that, whether that's Mikel Arteta, who I think could be very, very capable of it, they're 2 names I would throw out there. Because they do, they would give them, they need to find the next Pochettino. Basic. They need to find an outstanding young manager from the continent who comes in and, as I said before, makes players better. Average players good, good players great.
We saw Hoffenheim had a resurrection a few seasons ago with Julian Nagelsmann. Could he be another name?
He could be. He could be another name. Absolutely could be. Yeah, why not? The reason why I didn't mention him is because I think he's going to manage Bayern.
Fair enough.
Anybody who's good in Germany goes to Bayern Munich, unfortunately, even including players like Goretzka.
And Max Meyer.
Yeah,
he's going to move too.
Yeah.
I don't suppose you see Arsenal winning Europa League, do you?
No, I don't think they'll win the Europa League, but I think they might beat Milan.
Okay. Interesting. Why? Because he's been on fire under Gattuso. They've been outstanding, at least in their last 9 or so.
It's been great, and I've been a lot of time for Gattuso. I just think that the cycle of Wenger and Arsenal is that when you least expect, they perform. And they probably reached the lowest of the low this season, losing to Forest in the Cup. An embarrassing performance at Wembley. And I feel like you're going to see another reaction to that. So I think that it suits them now, their narrative. Oh, they're not going to beat Milan. Milan are flying, and they'll probably beat them.
Fair enough. Yeah, lose to Östersund, beat Milan.
Right.
That's just the way to do it. We'll move to Champions League now on the note of things that Arsenal won't touch. Who are your favorites to win the Champions League this season?
Favorites or favorite?
Favorite, though.
Because I could name a number of them because it's open, right?
Yeah.
Who's your favorite?
I think it's
Man City.
I think between City and Barca, I think are the 2 favorites to win it in terms of betting odds.
Right.
Just because you have Barcelona versus Barcelona style play to reach it, but then again, after every game, you see, okay, well, Madrid aren't finished now. Bayern are like, oh, cool, you guys are on the rise, Besiktas? Yeah, we're just gonna thrash you and show you what it is that we do.
Yes.
And really, the reason I name those teams is because they're probably the deepest teams, right? Aside from Juve, but Juve's a coin toss with Spurs for the next round.
Right.
Who do you think are the favorite to win it then?
Bayern Munich.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I think they're the best team in Europe right now over the last few weeks, and they're fit and they're ruthless and they're hungry. So I think Barcelona have been great. They've overachieved this year. All the expectations minus Neymar going, and Suarez hasn't been anywhere near the level he was last year. Dembele's been injured. So, we don't even know right now sitting here if they're going to get through Chelsea yet. So, would we be surprised if Chelsea went there and, put in an incredible Antonio Conte defensive performance and scored a goal in this transition and counter-attack and won 1-0? No. So, I think that, for me, Bayern Munich are in the quarterfinals, much like Manchester City. And I think, for now, they are my slight favorite.
It's interesting that you mention Chelsea and Barca, because that's actually my next question. Who do you see Chelsea doing well in the second leg and going through and pulling off the upset?
I'll be surprised, but like I just said, there's a clear platform for them to go out there and do what we've just done, 2012.
Right.
So, I thought they'd get I thought when it came around that they get thrashed, to be fair, because I've not been impressed with them a lot over the last few months, to be fair. Probably the best away performance of the season was at Atletico Madrid in the Champions League, and I thought, this team's gone on another gear. This is a sensational team. Morata was magnificent. Bakayoko, I thought, was playing well at that time, and then they've gone on a massive dip. You look at their big performances away from home in the Premier League this season. Since then, they've not been anywhere near the level. And again, at Old Trafford, it has to be said, first half, outstanding. Second half, not great. So, is there a level of trust there that we can say that in over 90 minutes they can go out there and deliver it against Barcelona? Like I said, I'll be surprised. So I think Barcelona are the big favourites.
What do you make of Neymar's injury, keeping him out of the second leg?
It's a pity, because I would have loved to see him try and go against the Goliaths of European football and try and show that somehow his maturity can keep up with his performance. Because the level of performance that we've since expected from him is definitely hindered by I think the lack of maturity as a footballer and his behaviour, unfortunately. So it's unfortunate, but I do think it's good news for Brazil.
Yeah, fair enough, because you'll get some much-needed time off. It's a shame. It really is, because I wish I had seen him, and I love Madrid as well. It would have been nice to have seen how Neymar could inspire this team to a comeback.
Yeah.
Because after last season, and it was just, I remember running around the block screaming at that game for 6-1. It was just, to inspire that comeback so late with the free kick and then the assist. And now we won't get to see that same magic from him anyway.
Well, he moved to that game. He moved to Paris to playing games like that,
right?
As well. Like, he didn't move there to go beat Troyes 8-0.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He moved to Paris playing games like this. So it's a real pity, and it's one that now the rest of the team it puts them on massive alerts, because Unai Emery is hanging on by a thread, really. And if they don't get over this hump, then you'd expect they'd be moved aside.
The final note on Champions League is here. And I know you answered this, you touched on this on TSN, but for the Jersey crowd, what's the likelihood that all 5 English teams advance?
Slim, but boy oh boy, what incredible history that would make. Look, Man City are there. I think United are going to get there, so I think they'll be fine.
Liverpool are there.
Liverpool are there. That's 3 already. I picked Spurs to beat Juve when the picks came out at the start of when the draw came out, and look, Juventus were great in the first half, but that Higuain penalty miss is, I think, I give a little bit of an edge, only a slight one, to Spurs, and but I still think Barcelona. Even though we've explained how Chelsea might be able to get the job done, I think Barcelona should beat them.
On the note of Juve Spurs, because that's probably of all of them the most competitive of the fixtures.
Yes.
And we think, I don't know, do you know if Dybala's fit for that second leg?
Questionable at this point, I think, yeah.
Because he has been just sensational when he's in form, and he started the season outstanding. I think he had 10 goals in less games than that.
So he's taken his game to a new level, hasn't he?
He's really developed into the player that they'd hope he would be. And so if he's fit, and they're playing against a Tottenham side that still don't have Alderweireld, who I think is so clinical for their back four, as great as Sanchez has been,
he's been very good.
He's been he's performed very well.
Yeah,
Toby on his day is top 3 best center backs in the league, if not in Europe.
Yeah,
I think he's just been outstanding there, and I think that's a total mismatch if Dybala's back and
Sanchez plays.
Right.
Yeah, you might be right. The one thing about Spurs is that I still don't think they've quite got their midfield balance right this season. I think Wanyama's played a lot more minutes lately, but they're better when he's in there. I understand why they don't want to play him there, because it takes away a little bit more of their quick athleticism, particularly in transitions. But no, it's going to be a really compelling tie. It could go either way. And the one thing about Juventus is that they know how to win. They know how to win, and they're used to going away from home in the Serie A against teams who pile forward a lot, like we saw it recently in Florence, pile forward a lot, have a lot of the ball sometimes, and then just go beat you.
Right.
And they just know how to win. And Spurs are finding ways to win, but I don't think we can really say yes completely 100% right now. They know how to win those games, so we're going to find out.
We'll wrap up the show on this, just the last talking points, and it's coming out of Spain. 2 things, one for Madrid and one for Barcelona, because how are they not going to be a talking point?
Right.
There's not as much of an issue now with Madrid as there was towards earlier in the season, because they've kind of recovered and they've been playing a lot better, with the exception of that conceding that late goal against Espanyol the other day. If Madrid are planning on revamping their squad to be a full-time powerhouse again, who do you see bringing in? Some of the names include Kane, Salah, Hazard, Neymar, Icardi. Any of those?
Wow.
You think they could? Or do you think they put faith in Asensio and Isco and their Vasquez and their youth?
No, I think history dictates that Madrid will get another Galactico. And there might even be another Galactico era. I think what I will say is, watching the game against PSG, I was almost disappointed. Not because they came back, but just because I didn't feel like it was at the high level of quality that I thought it should have been. And I know they beat them and they found a way to beat them, and PSG is a whole different story about not stepping up and converting the chances when they should have done. But for me, it wasn't at a high level that we perhaps seen. Maybe we've seen us, and I even use the word perhaps because they've won back-to-back Champions League titles, won back-to-back European Cups, and I still think when they've won them, there's an element of, yes, they did it because they found a way to do it and they know how to win it, but what was truly great about those sides? And I still think that's a fair question, and it's an unusual one for somebody who cares so much about the history of the game, that think how these teams are labelled. How will we remember this Real Madrid team under Zidane? I don't know whether obviously we'll have to remember them as being a great side, but individually, how many times you watch them play, they've been really great. I don't know, and they certainly weren't that good against PSG. Yep. So my point, Nathan, is this: I think that they need to make some significant changes. I think they're going to sell Bale. I think he'll be gone. I think they might sell Benzema, even though I think he's a very criminally underrated player. Karim Benzema, okay. Yeah, I think he's a sensational player, and I don't like seeing him get booed at the Bernabeu, but that's another story entirely. Yes, they need to obviously evolve with the youth and get those guys going as well, but it's clearly a team that needs to identify a couple of more players that need to be brought in, and maybe even a goalkeeper as well, which I think is very important for them.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You just mentioned something interesting there with Benzema, because I've seen arguments really both sides for Benzema. I've seen him you just said he's underrated, and I think many people think he's overrated.
Right.
How come you say he's underrated? What does he do for you? Because you know who else agrees with you? Zidane. Right. Zidane loves him. Yeah,
I think that people's expectations of Benzema may be out of whack a little bit. I think that for me, I like my number 9 to be significantly involved in all aspects of the game. And some people don't, and that's fine. Everybody's opinion is different. I'll always say this, to anybody who watches this, who wants to get in the sport, we're not all looking to have the same opinion. We're all surrounded by influencers. It's like, okay, he thinks this, it must be right. It doesn't mean it right. It doesn't mean they're wrong. Right. I just, some people want their number 9 to be consistently the number 9, banging 30 goals like, Harry Kane, who does get involved, but not as much as Benzema. Yeah. But I think he makes players better around him. I think he's strong. He's tough. They're better when he's fit. Then they miss him when he's not playing. And for me, I think that if France had, by the way, we come all this back full circle because you're a huge Portugal fan. If France had him in 2016, I think they would have won the Euros.
Interesting. I'll never admit to that point.
But they didn't have him,
you're right.
And your team won the Euro, so who cares?
So fair enough. Exactly.
It doesn't matter. It's all ifs, buts, and maybes. And meanwhile, you've got Ronaldo shirts hanging up saying he's a Euro winner, so it's
got
fine.
One there. I've got 5 over there.
There you go.
Got all the Ronaldos I need.
Oh, you got Sergio Ramos there.
Yeah.
I've just noticed this is in number order, isn't it?
Yeah. Chronological. I actually received some complaints that it pissed people off that it wasn't in order. So I was like, all right, I'll make it in order.
Oh, it did?
Yeah. I used to have it
it's just like randomized?
Yeah, because I thought it looked cool with the colors, and then I was like, all right, fine, I'll put it in order.
I didn't even notice, but I'm not very
I have a lot of number 10s, as you can see.
You need a number 6.
Yeah, you're right, I do.
Yeah.
Any suggestions?
Number 6.
Davinson Sanchez. Bang.
You could always get my favorite player of all time who wore number 6. Do you know an idea who that might be?
No. Who's that?
Xavi Hernandez.
That is, I've asked my friend to buy his jersey off him, and he has a retro Xavi shirt. I'm like, oh man, I want it.
Yeah, my son has it. My son, when I went to Barcelona, I've got to get my son one of them. He's outgrowing it right now. Did you?
Yeah, and it's only because Xavi hadn't been there yet. And then the next season I got Iniesta. And to be honest, if Xavi was still there, I would have had his jersey already too.
So I'm actually one of these days I want to buy a signed Xavi shirt. That's one of my next things I want.
I've looked into them. That would be cool if all these were signed, but I do not have that much money.
No, I think this is more than cool enough. Quite frankly, you don't get many of these things around these parts. You You've done a great job, and you do a great job on the show.
Thank you. And I literally have one more question before we wrap it up, and it's on the note of these phenomenal Barca players.
Okay.
Will they go invincible this season?
I'd say no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that answer. I hope not. I don't want them to.
You don't like them?
As a Madrid fan, no. I can't like them. I hope they lose the Clásico.
Well, this is the thing, is asking them to go all the way through. I don't think that this is a team that many people even expected to win the league.
Right.
So,
yeah,
now,
you're right.
They've still got some limitations. And if they get the Champions League going as well, then obviously that's a lot. So there's a lot of games to go still. Like, we're talking, another 2.5 months to go in the season yet? So right. I would be surprised if they went unbeaten.
Cool. All right. Well, there you have it, everybody. That's going to wrap up episode number 38 of the Jersey Wall podcast. KJ, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Nathan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So cool to have you on. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the episode. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. We want everyone to see this. So have a good one, everybody, and we will see you back here next week.